Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a massive question, a multi-billion-dollar question, really. It's all about public sector pensions and healthcare and the complex rules that are supposed to keep these huge promises in check.
Yeah. Just think about that for a second. How do you account for a promise you won't actually pay out for maybe 30 years? This is the core challenge governments are grappling with. We're not just talking about numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real, binding promises for pensions and healthcare that are going to come due decades down the line.
So, to make sure these promises are handled transparently and managed properly, there's a super strict set of international accounting standards. You can think of it as a rule book for fiscal responsibility. So, let's crack it open and see what's inside. Okay, first up, we have the Employer's Rulebook. It's called IPSA S39, and this standard lays out all the accounting rules for the public entity, the government, that made the promise in the first place. The idea here is actually pretty simple. It's kind of like a credit card. A government can't just ignore a pension promise until the day an employee retires, right? Just like you can't ignore your credit card bill until it's completely maxed out. They have to account for that liability as it's being earned, year after year. This forces them to admit the true cost of their workforce today, instead of just kicking that can down the road for the next generation to deal with.
So, what do we actually mean by employee benefit? Well, as you can see, the official definition is incredibly broad. It's not just the salary. It's basically anything and everything of value that an employee gets in exchange for their work.
The standard breaks all these benefits down into four main buckets. Now, short-term stuff like salaries, that's pretty straightforward. But it's that second category, the post-employment benefits like pensions and medical care, that creates the huge accounting headache we're really diving into today.
All right, let's zoom in on pensions specifically. When you look at how they're structured, there are basically two completely different models. And the critical difference, well, it all comes down to one simple question. Who's carrying the risk? So, if the pension fund's investments totally bomb, who's on the hook to fill that gap? The answer to this question is what defines the plan. It has massive implications for both the employee and, you guessed it, the employer.
This chart lays out the great risk divide perfectly. With a defined contribution plan, all the risk is on the employee. The employer puts in a set amount, and that's it. If the investments do poorly, well, your retirement account just gets smaller. But with a defined benefit plan, the risk flips completely to the employer and, by extension, to the taxpayers. The risk that investments underperform or that people live longer than expected, that's their problem. If the fund tanks, they are legally on the hook to make up the difference.
But accounting for these super risky defined benefit plans hasn't always been so transparent. The old rules, under a standard called IPS 25, had some pretty serious loopholes that basically let governments hide the true cost of their promises. So let's see how the new rule, IPS 39, changed the game.
This old method was called the corridor approach, and it was a major problem. You can think of it as a kind of fiscal magic trick. It let governments smooth out their pension funds' investment ups and downs over many, many years. This meant the real financial picture could be hidden, with massive deficits just not showing up on the books for a long, long time. So here's the big shift. As you can see on the right, IPASS 39 came in and just completely eliminated that corridor option. No more games. It forces governments to immediately recognize the full financial impact of their pension promises. No more hiding losses. A deficit is a deficit, and it has to be reported right away. This, as you can imagine, massively improves our ability to compare and actually understand the true financial health of a public entity. Okay, so far we've only been looking at the employer's side of things, the government's books. But now let's turn the page because there's another crucial player in this story, the retirement benefit plan itself. It's really important to get this. A pension plan isn't just a line item on a government's budget. It's treated as its own separate entity, its own little company almost, with its own set of books. It's like a financial fortress with one single mission: manage the pension money and pay out the benefits to retirees. And you guessed it, these plans have their own rulebook too. It's called IPSAS 49, and this standard makes sure the plan itself is reporting on its own financial health clearly and transparently. So think of IPSAS 49 as a mandatory annual health checkup for the pension plan. It demands a full set of financial statements that detail everything: its assets, its liabilities, all the changes in its net worth, and its cash flow. This level of detail means that all the stakeholders can see exactly what the plan is doing with the money it gets and the investments it's making.
Okay, I know that was a lot of technical detail. So let's get to the bottom line. Why do these accounting standards, IPSA 39 for the employer, IPSA 49 for the plan, why do they actually matter to any of us?
This quote really says it all. The whole point is to provide useful, and this is the key word, transparent information about these absolutely enormous long-term liabilities. Ultimately, it's about moving from a system that was fragmented and confusing to one unified, transparent way of reporting these huge financial promises. This number one really symbolizes that shift from complexity to clarity. One set of rules, one clear picture.
Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about accountants geeking out over numbers. This is about accountability. It's about making sure that the promises made to our police officers, our firefighters, our teachers, that those promises are honestly reported, not just to them, but to all of us, the taxpayers who ultimately back every single one of those promises.
Thanks to standards like these, we have a much better shot at answering that question with a confident yes. They give us the tools we need for real accountability, making sure that public promises aren't just made, but that they're also kept. Thanks for watching.